Hello, welcome back to this channel here. My name is Michaela, this is Meekela Reads. I live here. September has passed. It has left us before I even registered that it was there in the first place. It's gone. However, we did get a significant amount of reading done in September, which it's been amazing. I'm out of a reading slump. This is a wild ride. I haven't been like this in quite some time, despite current difficulties with current books I'm reading, but that's a story for another day. Today, I'm going to tell you about the books that I've read in September. Disclaimer, so many of these books are for other videos that you haven't seen yet. So there will be lots of like half alludes to things that I've read with no like proper actual thoughts about it, but I will do my best to give you like a rough brief overview, but just know that more is coming in the near future. So in light of that, I will actually just start with those so we can bang them out and continue with the rest of the video. So literally the first book that I read in September was Uzumaki by Junji Ito. This is a graphic novel manga by Junji Ito. This is a horror manga and it lived up to that. Within this story, we follow Kiri, who is our main character mostly, and her best friend, and their town is going a little bit crazy. It starts with the best friend's father being really obsessed with spirals, and everything literally spirals out of control from there. Overall, very terrifying for someone who is a newbie to the genre such as me, but overall it was a really interesting concept. I really enjoyed it. I was slightly disappointed by the end, but I think that that's just a me thing. I don't think that that's a this book thing. So again, there'll be more about it, but that's Uzumaki. Then I read Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. I have already read this. I have a whole video about it if you want to know more about my thoughts on this one. But again, overall, rough summary. This is Ali Hazelwood's second novel. It is yet another science romance book with a tall, dark, broody and handsome main character and a quirky female lead. They are previous arch nemeses who have to co-lead a team at NASA for a project that they both really love, but they have to learn to tolerate each other, essentially. The TLDR of it is that it was really easy to read. I did have a good time. However, I did prefer The Love Hypothesis to Love on the Brain. Next, I listened to The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, again, for reasons, but baby's first classic that she liked. Bell Jar was written in the early 60s, I believe, and it follows our main character who is struggling through what appears to be a period of depression. This is really like one of the OG unhinged girly books, which I'm surprised that I liked it because it's a classic and an unhinged girly book. There are so many trigger warnings for this for various different mental health things, so if that's something that you need to look out for, please do that. Please take care of your brain. However, I had a really good time with it, and it was just really interesting to see like how mental health was managed in the early 60s or like around that time, and at least where I am, how not different that is to right now. There's obviously things that have changed, but where I live there is still like an institution where you can go if you have significant mental health difficulties that is structured so similarly to what was happening in the Bell Jar. It's just wild to me. It was very eye-opening, and I will be purchasing a physical copy of this before the year is out. I then read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is a reread for me. Again, there is a whole video coming about this. However, I have reread this in preparation for the sequel that is coming out in October. This is yet another romance contemporary. However, as per Colleen Hoover tradition, it's just riddled with domestic violence. I wanted to reread this because it is currently circulating the internet. I read it a while ago. I couldn't remember anything about it, and I just want to be a hot girl, smart girl with everyone else. Even Kendall Jenner has read this. So I just needed to re-familiarize myself with the world before figuring out if I wanted to read the second one, because I remember not liking this too much. Spoiler, still on the fence about it. But we follow Lily as she meets her current boyfriend Ryle and then goes through the relationship with him, but then we also flash back to her childhood with her childhood boyfriend and first love Atlas. I really enjoyed Atlas's chapters way more than I enjoyed Ryle's chapters. But as I said, whole video coming out about this. Stay tuned. It will be around somewhere. Coming to a screen near you. Then I read The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager again. I feel like that's like most of everything I read in September was like, there's more coming for this, just wait. The House Across the Lake is by Riley Sager. This is my first Riley Sager that I have read. It is a thriller. I read this in one day, essentially. Maybe just like slightly over 2 days, but I read it incredibly quickly. It was such a page turner. It left me with such whiplash at the end of the book. I thought I had guessed the twist. I had not guessed the twist, and then I don't know if I had guessed the twist. It was confusing, but I had a good time with it. So that's the summary. Again, more coming soon. Watch this space. Next, we can actually talk about the books that are not for other videos now. Oh my god, how exciting. Earlier in the month, I listened to Pachinko by Min Lee, which is a historical fiction book set in Korea and Japan, spanning from like early 1900s to early like 2000s. Very long period of time. We follow about 4 generations of people in one family and how their lives differ and intertwine and mirror each other. It was a beautifully constructed story. It was harrowing, it was emotional, the writing was so lovely, enough that it even translated across in audiobook, which usually if a book that I listen to isn't that well written, it doesn't super matter because I don't really process that when I'm listening to things, but when I'm reading things I notice it. But I noticed that this had really good writing even when I was listening to it, so very well written in my opinion. It was incredibly eye-opening to what Korea and Japan were in the past. I know that this is a historical fiction, however I do believe that it does sort of reflect and reference quite a lot of events and situations and just themes that obviously are historical. I am learning that historical fiction is actually not my favorite genre, and it's not something that I generally will continue to gravitate towards. I can appreciate that this was absolutely fantastic and beautiful, but I don't know, like historical fiction, not my favorite. I'm learning. This is a new discovery for me, but I'm not upset in the slightest that I read this book. I'm so glad I read this. It was magnificent, and if you have not read it, you should. And then literally finally, like this is the last 2 and they're a part of a series, so we'll talk about them together. I listened to The Bone Season and The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon. Coming in obviously first we have The Bone Season. This is the first book in the series. This is actually a urban fantasy, but also dystopian, but also sci-fi almost. The Bone Season is set in London in around 2050 to 2060. We appear to be in the middle of essentially a civil war between the residents of London slash the UK slash Ireland and a small subsection group of people who are what we call voyants. Voyants actually have these magical abilities and powers to communicate and use and work with spirits in various different ways. There's a whole class system to it. We follow my character Paige. She is a voyant and she has a really particular power. She is a dream walker, and it's a whole very in-depth magic system that I'm not even going to attempt to explain because there's just so much to it. As Paige is a voyant, she is actually a part of essentially like the underground crime syndicate. It's called the Syndicate, and that's where all of the voyants essentially are, and they all have powers, they all trade. This is just a whole nother bustling life. However, we start the book in The Bone Season. Paige is kidnapped by the government and sent to what appears to be a camp where she becomes a slave to serve aliens. This is why I'm confused about the genre of this. Like, it's very confusing, but I'm gonna leave the synopsis talking there because A, I don't fully understand it and I'm 3 books in. B, I don't want to spoil it for you. It's really cool. You should just read it. I don't know why I slept on this for so long. I've literally had The Bone Season on my TBR for at least 5 years. It's so good. It's so well written. It's so in-depth. The characters all have their own very distinct personalities. There is a romance subplot, but it is by no means a single part of the story. Like, there's so many other things that are going on. This is one of the first political fantasies that I have liked as well, which is also bizarre for me. There is a deep, complex society. There are side characters with properly developed stories and backgrounds. And did I mention, like, the magic system is just so cool. I love it. I'm not going to say that it's a favorite, but it is definitely among one of the better fantasy slash dystopian slash sci-fi series that I have read recently. I then listened to The Mime Order immediately after finishing The Bone Season. Like, I was mid-car trip home, pulled over, put the second one on. It is really tricky to tell you the plot of this without spoiling the first book, but I will tell you that we continue the story, the ongoing conflict that's happening between the underground, the government and the aliens. Like there's just a whole thing that continues in this book. In this one I did struggle a little bit more with the cast of characters because we meet so many more people from so many more different areas, which is a strength because as the book developed, obviously that got a lot more in depth and rich and things were explained a lot more, but at the start I was a little bit confused. We do get to explore a lot more different places, which was super cool. Got to learn a lot more about different places, or at least one different place specifically, which actually really developed and added to the story a lot more. It really helped me to understand, I guess, what was going on in the world. So enjoyed the second one, but I think I enjoyed it in a different way. I think they're both equal but different like both of them. But these are all of my September books. Very exciting, very exciting. I had a really good reading month. It was a good time. How are you? How was your reading month in September? Did September fly for you? September flew for me. It was August like a day ago. With all of that being said and done, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're having a fantastic day or night or whatever time it is where you are in the world, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!